Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. And before we start, please let me just check the audio recording because I expect the worst today. Hello and welcome everybody. Okay, that sounds good. So as most of you have noticed, I have switched off the chat. This is on purpose because I would like to try something else. So for the past, how long? 2.5 years, I have been running the broadcasts with the live chat on. I have now collected enough data on the perps, not on the victims, but on the perps and their methods of distraction and how they are trying to, run psyops. And we can go back and go through all the different videos and have a look at that again. And I can have a couple of discussions about that. But you will notice that there's a non-stop stream of ever-changing anonymous actors. There's always anonymous people who have been with us throughout the time, and a lot of them are genuine victims who just don't want to reveal their identity, and that is fine. And typically those people are working towards constructive dialogue and are desperately looking for real solutions, like I am myself, and they are very supportive. And then there's always this backdrop of people who are terrorizing sometimes individual victims in the chat. So that is a lot of work, and I realized that while I'm talking, there's non-stop this kind of distractions running on the side, and they're all engaged in trying to divert your attention from it. And most importantly, they are trying to give you, and sometimes specific victims, a definite negative impulses, which are to do with the victim's particular case. So there's a lot of gaslighting that was going on. And unless you are the victim and know what a specific reference is referring to, you will not know that somebody's being targeted. So if it doesn't hit you, there's plausible deniability. But some of the comments were not as innocuous as they seemed. So I was weighing up the pros and cons of having the chat, having active participation. And what I want to do now for the coming weeks is just get rid of that for some time so that we can all figure out, do we really want it? Do we not want it? You have always the chance of commenting uncensored below the video later. And that is perfectly fine for public dialogue, but we don't need the active distraction all the time. Okay, so this is just to explain why, and the downside is I can't announce if I'm late, so hey, there we go. But anyway, so today will be packed with progress. Okay, I should say that at the moment I'm pretty chirpy and pretty, out for fight, but the bland truth is that maybe because of this work, maybe because that is just, part of my human trafficking, I have been tortured sadistically, and really I am being gunned continually when I'm in my study. I'm being continually gunned when I'm, somewhere about the house elsewhere. But particularly at night, they just open fire. And with they, I mean specifically the NATO and the US Space Command, who have the sole ultimate command and control over the satellite weapons. There are no satellite weapons that are not under the control of General Raymond of the US Space Command and General, whatever his name is, Herigian, that guy, the leader of the NATO Space Command. So when innocent women are being, machine gunned in their own home in total, obvious, premeditated contravention of the Geneva Conventions and of any laws of, law as established throughout thousands of years, well, it is their personal doing. Okay, so really, I can confirm, and I'll say that in court as well, that these men are war criminals and they need to be shut down. So the Space Command people need to be destroyed. And, first of all, them personally and their private assets, and they need to be jailed and executed for war crimes, but also these satellites need to be shut down. They need to be literally shut down, causing millions and millions of damage to the crime cartel who funded these Nazi assault weapons. And this is now becoming urgent. And unless people start talking about the satellite weapons and the schedule to take down the satellite weapons, they will literally murder us all in our home. Okay, so this is really, really urgent now. It's not just 5G. 5G is just the land deployment of a much wider genocide, genocide system. So this is what I want to say. I want a lot more people to start talking about this. Okay, and I will talk about it myself a lot more. But anyway, so this is 5G is the most urgent thing to stop. The directed energy weapons are run by the gang stalkers, the roving death squads. They need to be shut the F down. And I still don't see a single senior person report about this or mention it or come up with some sort of schedule or plan or campaigning to have these, weapons of mass destruction on our streets shut the hell down. Okay? And it's now the 23rd of June, 2019, and it's just about time. Okay? So tomorrow is Monday, and I want you all to get into work and start developing a plan of how the F are we going to shut these people down. And I remind everybody that as much as all the satellite weapons are controlled by the NATO Space Command, so there are definite people who can be gotten into a court, into a jail cell, and can be induced, I don't want to say tortured, even though in their cases I really couldn't give a damn, given that they're torturing me, but there's a way to get the information out of them or out of their databases of which satellites they are firing nonstop, for example, at people like me. And every single individual victim case traces back to a bloody satellite. Okay, or cluster of satellites. So please get going, because this is now bloody urgent. Okay, for 3 years solid, my body has been ripped to shreds. Okay, literally ripped to shreds. And when these people get going, you get about 2 to 3 shots per second. And that is just how many I can, my brain can even distinguish as I'm being just shot to bits. Okay. And they will shoot out all the intelligentsia until the only people who are left are the gibbering morons. Okay. Now that's not really a program for success, is it? So you're not doing anybody any favors by withholding this information and not talking about it publicly. We need the satellite weapons shut the fuck down. And these people in the space commands need to be arrested next week. They need to be stopped. Okay. And even when you stop them, you still have the death squads run by Lockheed Martin and the FBI on our roads, and they are killing people. They are slaughtering people. Okay. And the reports I get from people saying, oh, there are these, deaths in my street. Yeah. Those are directed energy weapons. Okay. Directed energy weapons. They are killing people in their own homes now. So it is high time, right? Other people, apart from myself, start talking about it, because I, on my own, will not be able to stop this. But if we start talking about it, then we can have a chance. Okay, so I'm sorry to be so angry, but I find it impossible to work. And unless people actually help me, right, and shut these weapons down, I cannot continue working for the good side. Okay. Now, I'm talking to all the senior investigators out there because, frankly, I am pissed the fuck off. Like, I can't even put it into words that still in the year 2019, June 2019, right, we still didn't have a peep out of anybody about directed energy weapons, about the satellite weaponry, and the only thing we talk about is 5G and electrosensitivity. Well, that doesn't come even close to you being slaughtered in your own home. Okay, so now I got this anger out, but seriously, it is getting high time. Okay, and I am just fed up of being the only person talking about the deployment of these weapons on our street every day, and the satellite weapons. So I want a plan how people are going to contact these, douchebags at the Space Command and really bring the fear of God or the fear of law into them, because these people are psychopathic killers. They have been groomed to be psychopathic killers, to be totally fucking stupid. Okay. And that makes them utterly out of control. So unless we get these NATO Nazi generals under control very quickly, we have lost the battle. Okay, so biggest priority, right, is NATO Space Command and US Space Command. Okay, on top of that, Lockheed Martin, the FBI, and these dickheads from our domestic intel agencies who are murdering their own people, right? The head of domestic intel in Germany has been replaced, and I don't see a bit of a change. he got replaced by another total Nazi running the extermination Nazi program in Germany. So the current deputy or whatever has to be replaced as well because he is a Nazi. He's a mass murdering Nazi running mass murdering Nazis. And we need to keep, taking them out of office and into jail until we have depleted the entire system of Nazis. Okay, but right now, Germany is running mass extermination live with active shooters live. And every time I go into Germany, I'm being shot to bits. And especially the police station in Constance is running gang stalkers like you wouldn't believe. Okay, they are Masonic outfit and they need to be shut down. But I want more senior people to move on this, because by just ignoring the topic or just going around it nicely, we will not get anywhere, okay? And honestly, I've done my bit and I now need help, okay? So let's all focus on this. So that's what I wanted to get out first, because this is the most important. Now, this is the work to be done starting Monday morning, okay? Now, what is the work that has already been done that has been a total success? So let me get on to the total success. Let me share my screen and let me show you. Here we are. So I mentioned the press release of the International Victim Survey. So just a second, let me just share my screen. Okay. Now, so this is on my website under interviews, press and media. Okay, you will find the first press release, which is here. And you can read the text that was sent out. And now what I would like to proudly present, so here's a sample email. There are many, many more. Okay, this is just what it looks like, showing you that all these emails are indeed included. I can include all the million other emails I sent. This is the attachment that was sent to all these people, okay, that proves, if you scroll down to here and look at the numbers in red, those are percentages, proving that even out of these 15 affidavits, 100% talk about, surveillance, non-stop surveillance, housebreaking, stalking, hacking, Jews, biowarfare, voice to skull, image to skull, neurotech, and every second person about generational targeting, okay? Now, with this, these are all court actionable affidavits. They prove a global targeting program because, number one, looking across the rows, it is physically impossible for one person to suffer all of these everywhere where there's an X placed, okay? It is statistically and under normal circumstances physically impossible to have so many offenses suffered. And that is the same for everybody here. I mean, look at just how many different offenses are suffered by one person, okay? Now, these people also have evidence, sometimes not for every single one, but they have evidence for different things. But they all testify about the same thing. So looking across a row horizontally, you can already prove that there are large-scale government programs. And looking down vertically, so one column at a time, you can prove how prevalent they are. You can prove that this is an identical all-out assault program run globally, absolutely globally, okay? So it's North America, it is Europe, it is Russia, it is Asia, it is everywhere, okay? And this is just based on these 15. So pretty big deal. Okay, and these are very, very detailed affidavits, and it's not just one X that could have been placed by accident. It is, in every section, there are several X's with exact starting dates and so on. Okay, so very big deal. We have now the first ever, evidence that is really nailing it. And also the most important is this column here, that the targeting doesn't stop. As in, it doesn't matter what year it started, was it here like almost 50 years ago, or was it something more recent? The targeting is for life. It is an extermination program, and that is outlined right here. Now, this was such a big deal, okay, and so valid from a court case point of view, that I sent out this press release, okay, and down here, what you can see now, the third affidavit, I've now summarized in one PDF. It's 60 pages long, all the emails that this press release has been sent to. So you have the text of the press release, you've got the attachment that was sent, and you also have the emails of the people it was sent to. It was, for example, sent to all the British members of Parliament, all of them. You can see their emails here. And this little X on the side is a tick that the very first press release has been sent. And on the front page, you can see the timeline. So on the 5th of June, I contacted the press of the United States. And if you ask which press outlets, well, the emails, exact emails I used are in this document further down. Then the press of the United Kingdom, the press of Germany, of France, of, well, Belgium, I only had 3 outlets because people didn't send me a list yet. But Netherlands has been contacted, Switzerland, Canada, Denmark, Norway, Poland, Finland. Okay? Now, this is a pretty stonking press list just from here to here. Okay? That is pretty international. It covers Canada and the US, so North America, and it covers Europe. Okay? Not every country of Europe, but it's a pretty good first start. You know, the biggest ones are all there. Okay? Now, I went further. I contacted the police in Germany, the Landeskriminalämter, and the state police agencies and the federal police agency called the Bundeskriminalamt, which I personally call the Bundeswehrkriminalamt. So the Bundeskriminalamt stands for Federal Police Service, and I always call it, so no, actually it's the Federal Criminal Service. And I call it the Federal Very Criminal Service because for 21 years, I have evidence that for 21 years, they have actively covered up Germany-wide extermination with directed energy weapons. And that is just the Bundeskriminalamt, you know, that one institution, right? So very criminal. I also contacted the intel agencies of Germany, of the UK and Switzerland. And you might ask, what is the possible point? And also, by the way, of the US. And you might ask, what is the possible point of contacting the perpetrators? Well, the point is that I want to prove that they are perpetrators by notifying them of crimes against humanity and then henceforth proving that they did jack all about it. Okay? I want to get personally Andrew Parker personally into court, Alex Younger personally, and the heads of all these other intel agencies. Literally, I want them jailed for life for having committed Nazi war crimes. And the way I want to go about doing it is to prove that these people between now and the court cases will do exactly jack all. I'm pretty sure about that because that is their program. Okay, they will not fight this terrorism. They will not arrest anybody. They will not actually secure a single directed energy weapon, even though there are millions out on our streets. Not one. Okay, and that is precisely what will seal their fate. Okay, I also contacted the military of Switzerland and the NATO Space Command, the US Space Command. Okay. But I also contacted politicians, for example, the entire EU Commission, all the EU parliamentarians for the UK, the EU parliamentarians for Finland and Estonia, and the EU deputies. And then, as I just said earlier, all the British MPs. Now, these email lists, the vast majority of the press lists and of the lists of politicians were all contributions from individuals who helped me. And I am extremely grateful for the help. Without them, I could have never, ever, ever put this together this fast within 1 month. Okay, but as you can see, now in June, we have notified all these people and they have been now told that there are crimes against humanity happening in North America and Europe. And that is now the point of no return. And that is the beginning of their downfall. Okay? So this is very important work. And I want to show you just how many emails people dug out. For example, here's the person who sent me all the MPs. These are 600 emails that were pulled up for me, and I'm extremely grateful. Okay? I'm just going to flick through because I have to show on the screen now, should evidence disappear, that, you know, I have actually, I had these emails at some point and I've sent them. So I'm just going to scroll through these 60 pages, but bear with me. So there's where I couldn't contact them because this one says contact by written letter only, like 1 out of 650 MPs. I'm sorry, I'm not going to write a letter. All your friends got it via email. You will probably get it if, you know, they talk about it. Get them to forward it to you. But anyway, so there's one MP I couldn't contact here. The others have all been contacted. And let's see. Then here, members of the European Parliament. There are 28 commissioners. They have all been contacted. Okay. Then for the European Parliament, I only have the UK and I only have Finland and Estonia. If there are any missing here, please send them to me. Okay, first of all, if there are any missing for Finland and Estonia, but also all the other countries, okay? The members of the European Parliament are very, very important. This would be a great investment of your time if for your country you send me the MEPs, okay? Then a kind person also sent me their deputies. So I've got a list of deputies, okay, just to send it to them so they also know. Oops, sorry. I don't know what happened here. Okay, now the Intel contacts. I have contacted MI6 and MI5 and GCHQ over their web form, and I think it was MI5. Oh, I think I swapped these two. So MI5 should be the first line. I think it was MI5 that had the biggest pain in the backside type of web form, okay, where you can only put in, I don't know how many 100 characters. So I had to shorten my message just for MI5 because apparently, you know, their digital space is rationed. Ridiculous. But anyway, the other thing that I found extremely amusing is that there is no way. So here, for example, okay, so here's UK, that's Germany. So Germany is something called the Verfassungsschutz, so called constitutional protection, even though Germany does not have a constitution. Very, very interesting, right? But anyway, then down here, the United States, I've contacted the FBI, the CIA, and with the NSA, I have to say it is hilarious because there is no way to email the NSA. If you want an NSA to end, if you want an email to end up with NSA, you can send an email anywhere on the planet, but you can't actually send an email directly to them, right? Is there anything wrong with that? I don't know. But so these people have these, you know, stupid web forms. The other thing that I find extraordinary, and I want to show you this, is the US Army is impossible to contact. It's actually, I'm pretty sure by design, it is, I found it physically impossible. So you go to their webpage, okay, here, so you've got the Army. This is the Army Inspector General, but it also works with the Army. By the way, on the by and by, do you remember the thing I said about the Roman symbolism? So the Army Inspector General is literally posing here with a logo made up of a sword of a Roman, I think it's called a fasci or something like that. It's like a bunch of sticks tied together with an axe. And two of these were what was knocking around in the Roman, you know, was it the Senate? Okay, so this is a Roman rule right there, and the wreath. Okay, so the army is just chock full of cartel signaling. And then also look at these little images with the little satanic pentagrams that they can put on their, you know, shoulder pads and feel really pleased with themselves. You also have the Pentagon, you know, the pentagram right there, the satanic pentagram. So this lot, okay? Now, when you say file a complaint, okay, you can phone these people, apparently, but when you're trying to navigate this website, which is, by the way, it's stalling, so I can't actually get there. So you can go to civilians, and then it seems like you can choose who to contact, but when you actually try to contact them, you end up in an endless loop. So I haven't found a single, you know, submission form. You just end up with text and then no form. It's absolutely hilarious. Okay, and then apparently there's a classified complaints page, but then you get page not found. So you have dead ends like these, but there are so many dead ends. I actually doubt that this is by accident. I think this is by design. So the Army, if anybody has an email I can use or a contact form for the Army, please send it to me. I just have these jokers here, and I literally, it was the biggest embarrassment. And when you're going through several countries, you can actually tell who's the biggest embarrassment. And so far, it's the US Army. I mean, even the Space Command was easier to contact than these guys. So I don't know what's wrong with them. But anyway, also, I have contacted DHS, every other I could find, like the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Geospatial Intel Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, you know, all these people who very likely are involved in the precise targeting for this you know, genocide weapon system. Then there's also the National Guard, where I'm not really sure what they do, but they do sound like a bunch of you know, gang stalkers. And then, oops, sorry. There's also NATO and the NATO Space Command. If you want me to contact the military of your country with this press release, please let me know, and it goes on the list. Then otherwise, here's the police contacts I use. So for Germany, I've contacted the Landeskriminalämter, so the state criminal police, what's it called? The crime officers. And also for the UK, I have contacted these regional constabularies and police, you know, for the shires, or the police stations where I could. Okay, so they have all been contacted now, and at this point, they cannot run around jibbing about the fact that they've never heard about directed energy weapons, because they were just pointed to affidavits signed under oath. Okay, so it is game over. Henceforth, from this date onwards, any police station trying to give you bullshit, you please refer them to this press release that they now have gotten. Okay, and also I was very careful that if I got an email that bounced, that I either removed it from the list or I found an alternative email that I then entered. So everywhere where you can see an email and an X, it means that, you know, the email was delivered. And for very many, I actually have a confirmation receipt. This is what this says here. So anywhere in the UK, you can now go to your police station and start filing directed energy weapon attacks. And if they give you any grief, please refer them to these affidavits. Okay? Now, the US press contacts at the moment are the big ones here. I've got an unsorted list, but I really could do with some more regional newspapers. In the UK, oh, sorry, here's Canada. There I could also do with the regional list, more detailed list. For the UK, a guy I'm really, really grateful to has sent me a long list of the regional newspapers. So I have contacted all of these, as well as the mainstream press. Germany has a long list now. And that one, half of it I've done myself, these here up here, but then I also got a regional list, a very long list here from a person who sent it to me, and I'm extremely grateful to this person. Okay, so it's all has been sent now. As you can see, it's going on and on and on. So a lot of work went into these. France has also a lot of regional newspapers, but I still need some more. Belgium has barely anything. So please, the people in Belgium, send me a press list. And the Dutch media are here, represented fairly well. Switzerland, I also got a list from somebody here. Now, Denmark can do with some more. I already got a list, which I'm extremely grateful for, but maybe some regional papers. Norway has a very long list of regional papers. Look at this. This is amazing. I contacted them all. Then Poland has the mainstream media, I believe. There I need a regional list. Finland has a very long list as well. So I am extremely grateful. So they have all been sent, and a lot of personal emails, so people get it directly. And then also I contacted places like Richie Allen, Alex Jones, David Icke, and so on. Okay, so these are the people who I know that they know what's going on and are reporting about it. So I wanted them to have the press release as well. So this is the news currently from the press release. And I want to stress, okay, that I am so grateful to all the people who contributed, because once you have this press list, okay, once you have the press list, you can keep sending them information just by copy and paste. I want to, I'm only going to send the most pertinent stuff, so set press releases, but also as soon as these documents have been made and you now have the press release and the full email list, so the actual text and the email list, you can also put both into your quote bundle and say, these are all the different outfits that have been contacted with this message, which is very important. It is about a program that is killing us all. And now let's look at how many actually report about it. My estimate would be it's very close to 0. And then immediately what you have in just 2 weeks time is you can prove that none of these press outlets reported about it, ergo they are actively covering it up. And this means that every person in every country now has a legal claim against their own press for discrimination and covering up important evidence. Now, at this moment in time, you have to be a bit more careful because the press release only has really, 8 affidavits from the United States. There's, for example, 0 for Norway, but Norway is mentioned in the list of how many countries have been involved in targeting. Okay, and that is in the attachment. So all those countries also have a real problem that the human intelligence networks have been taken over by this global crime cartel. Okay, so you do have a legal claim if you are a victim, because it means that this very large group of people are actively colluding to keep it from their population that the population is being murdered. Okay, that is the very definition of treason. Okay, so in other words, all these journalists who have been contacted and all the politicians and most certainly all the police and the intel agencies, they are now at the crossroads. They can either report about it in the case of journalists or act about it in the case of police and politicians, or, right, they can cover it up, and that's the high road to treason. Okay, and I mean it. This is treason. They are directly responsible for people in their country being tortured to death because they refuse to draw attention to these crimes. So that is the full scale of this. Now, if you want me to improve on this, there are several ways I can improve on this. I can have a second press release where I'm talking about in much more detail about implants, about how we have found implants, very easy to find, the ones in the eyes. And for those people who are new, I want to remind you which particular implant I'm talking about by sharing my screen. And I am talking about implants that look like that have been implanted under the iris. And this particular one is being manufactured by Omega Ophthalmics. Yeah, Omega Ophthalmics. And Omega Ophthalmics has a little video showing how easy it is to inject this flexible cavity into the eye. And then it kind of, pops out and pops into shape. So when you shine an ultraviolet light in and you see a green fluorescent surface a couple of millimeters behind your iris, so behind the colored bit, this opening, you are seeing the bottom of this container. Okay, and the number of people I have seen run around with these containers in their eyes is truly staggering. Okay, very, very important to know. Okay, I want you to understand this. So the next press release will be about all this. It will be about evidence of people being burnt up in their home, evidence of being shot in their home, and then the eye implants. And once you understand the directed energy weapons and the implants, the combination of these is the neurotechnology attacks. Okay, so when people have hallucinations and they are tortured, it is movies, virtual reality movies being played on these eye implants. If they are talking about their internal thoughts being read out, it's typically subvocal speech. that is read out by having biosensors next to the vocal cords, which are vibrating even when you're not talking. Okay, when you are thinking in terms of speech, because you're so hardwired, you know, the vocal, you're not passing any air through, but the vocal cords actually vibrate, and this is how it's read out. Okay, now there's also other ways to do that, but typically this is how it's done. Okay, so we are building up to this. So now the press knows about crimes against humanity. The next one will be about the torture and how exactly it is done. And the third one I plan to have about neurotechnology. That would be, for example, Operation Crimson Mist. The people of Rwanda being mass murdered by the US Air Force using neurotechnology attacks. It is also things like the deployment of neurotechnology in Iraq to mass murder Iraqis and make the Iraqi army give up, right? And so on. So, and then on top of that, we also have the deployment of neurotechnology, not just in treasonous, you know, according to international law, criminal takeovers of countries like in Rwanda or in Iraq, right? We also have them in the deployment in cities. And there's already a whistleblower who says that an entire city, so that's what he was testifying about personally, that he's aware that an entire city in the United States is now under this large-scale neurotechnology control with all the, you know, the gaslighting and social experimentation on the smaller scale. Now we're talking about millions of people. Now, when you're talking about that scale, it means that those people, that city, they have managed to wire everybody up to, so first of all, they're all implanted without their knowledge, but they're also all hooked up to the Lockheed Martin remote control software that is controlling their chips. So Lockheed Martin and the FBI most definitely are reading out the chips. Okay, the NSA, you know, for sure is also, because that is the superstructure. And it means that, you know, these organizations, Lockheed Martin, FBI, and NSA, and their equivalents in Europe, have now the capabilities to control entire cities. Okay, if you're walking around a city and you're wondering why everybody runs around like a zombie and doesn't really get what you're talking about, it might be because of this. Okay, so big deal. Okay, now all of this is important because both the implants and the neurotechnology will be used for mass murder to achieve, to satisfy the genocide plans and kill all these millions of people by 2025, as announced by Deagle, and also the 2030 UN plans for sustainability, which is cartel doublespeak for genocide. Okay, for population reduction, which is a nice way to say genocide, and mass murder. Okay, so that's why these press releases are important. And this is why the people who contributed with email lists are really heroes fighting for humanity here. Now, what I want from the rest of you is I want you to pull your weight. Okay, I am also looking, that's the next step, for email lists for all the doctors in your region, all the lawyers in your region, and all the local police stations in your region. Okay, these three. So doctors, oh, and psychiatrists. Okay, pseudo doctors. So doctors, psychiatrists, lawyers, and local regional police stations. And if your country doesn't have any of the big stations, then of course also your leading police departments. Okay, and all of these will get email lists, and all of these will be notified. Now, this seems so innocuous, just getting a little email. But in the case of crimes against humanity, they have a duty, a statutory duty to act anywhere in Europe. And I would say also by induction in the United States, okay, and Canada. So it is about creating legal liability. It is about getting them by the balls, okay? If you want to help me, please get going and look up the, you know, the yellow pages online, and then go through one after the other, as tedious as it is, and get me the emails of all the doctors in your region, as many as you can be bothered to send me. You know, 1 is better than nothing. 5 is a start. 10 is already good, right? And then every single time you feel bored or you're watching a TV show, in parallel, you can just, you know, collect emails. It is very tedious, dumb work, but it is super, super, super important and very powerful. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say. Now, Other work, okay, other work that has been done and is being done. There's a lot I want to talk to you about today. And I also want to talk about false flags. Now, what I want to show you is, let's go back to the front page. I want to show you, I've had an interview with Professor James Fetzer, okay? And now I'm talking about not just Professor James Fetzer and his court case, I'm talking about the entire spectrum of false flag attacks. Very important, okay? Because every single false flag attack has been with a purpose, to put into place something. So those people like Professor Fetzer and like Ole Dammegard, who are revealing, and by the way, also millions of other people online who have put out very good YouTubes debunking false flag attacks, for example, in the United Kingdom and in Germany. Now, they are all doing extremely valuable work. Okay, very, very valuable. So it means when they are being attacked administratively, you have to understand that as an attack on you personally, because that is what it is. You know, that is a form of Intelligenzaktion, whereby the people who have the insight, the academic skills or the research skills, you know, or just basically the time, get attacked so that they are taken down, so that they cannot give you the sort of information you need to hear, okay? So with this in mind, I would like to show you that I've uploaded the court documents for Professor Fetzer's court case that just happened on the 17th of June. If you scroll down here to the court cases, click on that, and you will find here, this one here, Professor Posner versus Professor Fetzer. Now, I would like to say something about this flag, because on purpose, I used something that is used for cartel signaling, because I want to indicate that it is the cartel that is behind this court case. Number one, what you need to know is that Skull and Bones, like the Skull and Bones Society, as in piracy, is a symbol for the global crime cartel. It always has been since the days of the pirates to this day. The other thing that you can see here is, you know, a black flag, as in for black ops, okay, criminal operations. And the third is that the eye patch is a symbol for the all-seeing eye, because again, we just have one eye. And that's what I mean. It is the all-seeing eye behind this court case of Posner versus Professor Fetzer. But it also means that if Professor Fetzer as an individual is attacked by the entire global crime cartel, he needs backup. You need to help him, or else we will lose that battle. Do you understand? So my first step was to interview Professor Fetzer. If you go to my videos, you will find the interview with him. I want you to spread that on social media. Okay, please spread it, because what he has to say is very, very important. And also scroll through my videos, and you will find several interviews I did, I think 4 in total, with Professor Fetzer, where he debunks these false flags. It is super important, okay? Because the next step will be that I'm going to talk to you about what exactly these false flags are being used for. Very important. Very, very important. Now, first of all, this court case. Here's the background. Here's actually the interview with Professor Fetzer. I forgot I included that. It's right there. There's also a link to his book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook. Now, the Sandy Hook false flag is extremely important because it was used to weaponize it for gun confiscation, which is endearingly called gun control. But it's not about controlling guns at all. It's about confiscating guns, so that the only people left with guns are the members of the global crime cartel. And that is crucial for exterminating the American people. Okay, so you need to know that nobody died at Sandy Hook, because only then do you get the full logical chain. Now, I also put here the court summons, and then, you know, who was the judge who actually in the end decided against Professor Fetzer, but it's now going into appeal, and here's a news report. But down here, there are 16 documents, all related to the court hearing, okay? And these are very recent documents. The first one was filed on the 30th of April, and then it goes down, and the last filing, well, actually, the last filing was on the 14th of June, and this shouldn't actually be filed. This is, this is the document from the 17th of June, because it's the minutes of the oral hearing, and we now also have the transcript. Okay, and then here you have the summary judgment, and I'm not sure if this is the ultimate judgment, but if it is, one of the things I would like to point out is that it's neither signed nor stamped. So I have to get back to Professor Fetz about this and find out if there's a judgment which is actually signed and stamped, because if it's not, then I think the whole thing should be attacked as a fraud, as an administrative fraud. If somebody is, passing judgment over you, you have a right for it to be, certified as in this is actually the will of the government and not just, something this guy wrote in his free time. So, and then of course, once you have these judgments with the stamps, what you need to be aware of is that one guy found it out here in Switzerland. Actually, there's several people found this out, okay? There's one person I know in Switzerland who was talking about it, and a person in France who since then died, and I find it mysterious, okay? And it is about the symbolism of the Freemasons, who have typically not just infiltrated, but actually set up the courts as we know it, or AKA the Vatican Intel crime cartel, okay? Now, there's a secret code behind where on the page the stamp goes and things like that, and where the signature goes. And people have talked, people had a lot, had a look at a lot of the judgments that victims got, and a lot of the fraudulent judgments, realized, hang on, there is a difference between where the stamp goes and between how the whole page is set up. So I think what is happening is that traditionally, in the days before the internet and email and all that, when the entire criminal crime cartel had to, communicate using its insiders in the judiciary and in, other places like the police and so on, and in government, they had a secret code that they were all aware of. And that was, communicating to everybody that, well, the cartel wants you to take this person down. So from the judiciary, it wants that they decide against them, but then the judiciary passes it on to the police force, and the police force needs to know that this person has to be finished off in jail, and so on. Okay, so there's some sort of secret pattern, secret code embedded in these documents that come out of the judiciary and of other official, places. And as I said, it has now been found to be the case in Switzerland, and it has been found to be the case in France. Now, you can bet your socks it's going to be the same in the UK and the Commonwealth, because it's one big Masonic love fest. Okay, so therefore also look for this in Canada, all across the Commonwealth, and also in crown colonies like the United States and Germany. Okay, very important. But now on to false flags. So I mentioned how this entire thing about the court case against James Fetzer is extremely important. And now I would like to go into more details about how the false flags have been weaponized. Okay, now, and I will bang on about this for a lot longer, right, over the coming few broadcasts, because this goes right to the heart of it. So court cases, James Fetzer. Now, regarding false flags, okay, one big development is that Trump has now come out and said he knows who's behind, or he thinks he knows who was behind the 9/11 attacks. Okay, so President Trump says he knows who was behind the September 11, 2001 attacks, telling ABC News George Stephanopoulos, Iraq did not knock down the World Trade Center. Well, yeah, duh, because remember, the first country invaded was Afghanistan, not Iraq, right? Iraq was very far down the line. So adding, it were other people, and I think I know who the other people were, and you might also. Now, one thing I would like to point out is that Trump gives this speech in front of the Twin Towers, as in the double pillars of Freemasonry. And even the shadow is like double pillars of Freemasonry. Yeah, look at this image, and perhaps then you will know who took down the Twin Towers, right? It was the Masons people. It was the Vatican Intel, the Vatican crime cartel, which is identical with the CIA. Okay? So that explains why the head of the CIA, as it was, said, called off the planes that were scrambled, right, on the day, apparently. If I remember, this is what Katherine Horton asked the director of the CIA at one of the meetings. She, as a question from the audience, she said, "Why did you call off the fighter jets that were scrambled?" I mean, the government story is that planes hit the towers, and that's why, the planes hit up there, and that's why this entire thing fell down, even down here. And that's not all. What started falling at the top never arrived at the bottom. It just vaporized. Yeah, all because of planes. Sure. Now, but this is a big thing. So if Trump starts talking, I would be riveted to hear what the answer is. Here, the person who took this picture and took great care to misalign the picture so that it's at an angle, right, not straight. I mean, professional photographers have their ways of adjusting photographs when they take them and afterwards. So note how this is slanted, okay, to one side, and note that as you are reading this, and as Trump was saying it, you were staring right at the Masonic double pillars. Okay, be aware of this, with a couple of satanic pentagrams in the background, which is just part of the room's decoration. So have a good think if you know who took down the Twin Towers. Now, this is important because for the first time ever, right, an American president says or alludes to the fact that the official story is bogus. Okay? Now, this is very important. Talking about bogus official stories, I would also like to point you to the video from Victrus Libertas, okay, here. And please support these two because I think they're doing extremely valuable work. Okay. Oops, I've just realized I didn't like this, but I have to log in to like it. Now, you should like this video and you should spread this video. It has only 4,500 views so far. It should have a lot more because they are saying the 3 videos from 2016 that YouTube terminated Victrus Libertas for terminated Victrus Libertas for bullying and harassment. Okay, so what they mean is, in this little clip, they're showing you the 3 videos that led to their YouTube channel's termination under the pretext of bullying and harassment. But when you see the videos, it's not about bullying and harassment at all. It's about the expose of crisis actors recruitment. Okay, and here I have a still image. I would like you to go to the channel and watch it yourself. But the pair have now uncovered adverts on Craigslist and elsewhere advertising for crisis actors. And this one says actors required for security drills, brackets crisis actors, brackets USA. E9 is a private security firm, is seeking crisis actors for training videos and drills. Only actors with crisis acting experience need apply. By the way, if you only ever recruit crisis actors with prior experience, you are recruiting the same crowd over and over, right? So the first question is, how come the faces don't repeat? The answer is the faces do repeat. But then the other question is, well, if not all faces repeat, but all the others must have also had prior experience, where the hell did they gain the experience? And I will tell you where. It is part of gang stalking street theater, which is also a form of crisis acting. So in other words, what they are recruiting here is members of the crime cartel who are involved in crimes in the local communities, targeting individual communities, and then at the higher scale, targeting entire countries and their political process and their act of self-determination or attempted self-determination. Very important. And all this is hidden in this one sentence, right? Only actors with crisis acting experience need apply, right? You have to ask, where did they gain their experience? Now, requirements: all races and sizes, but must be able to sit, stand, run for long periods of time, 18 plus. Canadian citizens, clean background check, confidentiality agreement must be signed. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, which is these days called a confidentiality agreement, has throughout thousands of years been called omerta. Okay, it is, well, not really thousands of years, because before that we had Latin, and I'm not quite sure how it's said in Latin, probably very similar. But this is the vow of silence of the crime cartel. These days, the vow of silence is known as non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements, the Official Secrets Act, and so on. But it's the same thing. It's the fact that you will take part in criminal actions and treasonous actions, and then you will keep quiet about it for the rest of your life. Okay, now this particular crisis acting was required for November 14th to November 17th in 2016 in, guess where? Colorado, USA. Right? Colorado has a lot of shit going down. It also has the US Space Command. But now look at this. Salary, $1,000 per day for about 10 to 12 hours. 3 meals and snacks per day. Accommodation and travel. $1,000 per day for crisis acting. This is pretty good, right? This is pretty good. I mean, consultants get, I think, about anything between 1,000 and 400 per day to 2,000 per day, right? But for somebody who is a total dipshit to stand around, right, with fake blood smeared on their face, and they get $1,000 per day. So you can see, you know, why if you hire absolute trash, societal trash, why they will gladly keep their mouth shut is because they were paid off. Now, the audition date was Friday, July 17th in downtown Toronto. They don't really say what the venue is. So how do you find them in downtown Toronto? Was there a big, blood fest? And then, you just go there and you say, hey, can I have some of that fake blood to smear on my face? And then you can see if I look good with fake blood on my face. So, and then it says, please cut and paste a recent full body photo along with previous crisis acting work in the body of the email. Resumes must reflect crisis acting experience. No attachments, please. And do not contact me with unsolicited services or offers. Okay, so please watch this video because it has a wealth of experience. But if you're wondering how things like Sandy Hook are pulled off, it is like that. It is by hiring people off Craigslist. Okay, now we're getting closer and closer and closer to the big things. Okay, so talking about false flags, I would like to point you to a tweet by Artane Devian. Okay, and this is very important actually, and I also ask you to go through his feed because he has extremely important references, things that you should also download for your own records and copy and paste and make a reference list from. And also just go through because he has a lot of insight. He has studied this for a very long time and knows exactly how these criminals tick. Okay, now, in this exchange here, which was, I think, today, Donald Trump Jr. says, what the fuck again? Does Joe Biden have a Democrat friend that wasn't a segregationist? I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Biden references another former segregationist while campaigning. Okay, this is a link to a Breitbart article. But then Artane jumped right in, to Donald Trump Jr. and said, who did 9/11? Who did OKC? So OKC, for those who don't know, is the Oklahoma City bombing, which was a false flag. Okay, yeah. And you can read all about it. And I will, in the future, I should talk a lot more about the Oklahoma City bombing and what was behind it. But it is, extremely important that at this stage, you start educating yourself. And what I mean with important is that if you're in the United States, it is literally important for your survival. So please do your homework, read up about it, and start thinking, because I can tell you already that both 9/11 and the Oklahoma City bombing were false flags. The question is, what for? And the answer is here. Now, the many occasions Joe Biden took credit for writing the Patriot Act. Okay? That is here. So Joe Biden is tied in to the Patriot Act. And then here is also a quote from the New American about Joe Biden talking about creating a new world order. So Joe Biden is a globalist member of the crime cartel, right? But what I want to focus on here is the important pointers that Ortain has given us here, which is never forget, the OKC bombing was the first false flag to attempt to pass the Patriot Act to circumvent the US Constitution introduced by Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. This is hugely important, okay? But most of you will not even realize the importance of this tweet, okay? Which is why, actually, I should probably devote an entire episode to this. Now, what does it mean here, okay? So what it says is that the OKC bombing was the first false flag. So that means it was the beginning of the takeover, or this particular installment of the takeover of the US government, okay? So the Oklahoma City bombing started it, and it was a first false flag to pass the Patriot Act. Now, what you need to know about the Patriot Act, in addition to what is on Wikipedia, is that the Patriot Act gives effectively war powers, but it also has a lot of powers that allow any sort of fascist dictator to introduce exactly the targeting program that we see and destroy members of the American population. And this is not something that is in any shape or form allowed by the US Constitution, because remember, the US Constitution was by we the people, and we the people would not say, we the people resolve that one, mass murdering psychopath should come along and kill us all, right? So the document that was we the people has now been trashed, it has been thrown into the bin, and you are all now living under the Patriot Act. Okay, and if you're unhappy about that, you can thank Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. Now, this is something that if you're in the United States, you should never let these people forget, right? You can email Joe Biden, you can email Chuck Schumer, and when these people get a lot of angry emails about what the hell the Patriot Act was about, because now you can see it in action, I can tell you it registers, okay? It is basically like targeting in reverse. It's a form of psychological, now I don't really want to say terrorism, because it isn't terrorism. It's psychological pressure by the good people on the criminals, and it is completely legal. So you can, if you all get your act together, you can start putting completely legal psychological pressure on Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer for having trashed your constitution, and let's see when they crack. Because what they did is high treason, and it's high treason that is now mass murdering Americans with directed energy weapons in their home. Because the Patriot Act also led to the entire anti-terrorist nonsense, by the way, as did 9/11, which Donald Trump is now alluding to, okay? And you need to combine the Patriot Act and 9/11 and the entire history of how the Patriot Act came to be. Now, what Ortain is telling us that 9/11 was what introduced the Patriot Act, but there were several attempts before then. Okay, the Oklahoma City bombing was the first attempt to pass the Patriot Act, but it didn't work because people were too clever. So the United States had to be shocked by an even more spectacular bombing, okay? The Masons, the Masonic crime cartel working for Vatican Intel, realized that, taking down a building in the city of Oklahoma, it turns out most Americans couldn't give a shit about it. That's basically it, right? It wasn't big enough a deal. But for most Americans to take down 2 whopping towers, in the city of New York registered and sent so many shockwaves because it was, you know, filmed at such great detail and pumped into the bedroom so many times to create the necessary shock and horror, that it finally delivered the result, which was to introduce the Patriot Act. Okay, but also note in all this that what the Masons did, and here I am already alleging it was the Masons, okay, that's me saying it based on my evidence and my conclusions. What they did is that they took down their own double pillars, right? Now, you can be sure that when the Masons take down a big symbol, they will put something else in its stead, something that's even more important to them. In a sense, they have taken down an icon that it turns out is not so important to them anymore, and it will be replaced by something even bigger. So now you have to have your eyes open and see what that thing is that is even bigger than the Twin Towers. Okay, sometimes it's not in the same place. Sometimes these things grow out of the ground elsewhere. But I want you to do your homework now. Read up about the Oklahoma City bombing, because I will be talking much more about it. And I want you to understand what's in the Patriot Act if you're American, also if you're in Europe, because the same shit is going down here as well. Yeah, it is just by a different name. And first of all, also remember the names, Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. Remember that it was them who introduced the Patriot Act the first time round. Okay, and read all this, and most importantly, you know, start following this account and start reading up about what this account is putting out, because it is all things that you need to know and nobody will tell you. Okay, now there's something else about the entire Patriot Act and this anti-terrorism brainwash that followed, and it was, for example, also the NSA spying. Now, this is an important article from the 28th of May by L.J. Keith here, and it says the FISA court exposes Obama's abuse of NSA to spy on Americans. By the way, the one thing I'm slightly bothered about is that I'm working my ass off to help the Americans and American victims, and I'm painfully aware that to the Americans, being foreigners, non-Americans, we have the status of cattle, basically. And the only thing the Americans ever get bothered about if they get exterminated like the rest of the planet was for decades themselves. Okay, so I'm pretty pissed off and fed up about Americans going on about, oh, the spying on Americans. Well, yeah, but what about the spying and human trafficking of the rest of the world also? You know, that's something that bothers me, because the NSA is running around with this, you know, image that everybody else outside the US is game, right? Game to be shot, to be hunted. So anyway, that aside, right? That aside, you know what my personal viewpoint is in this, right? And at this point, I would like to stress it one more time. My personal viewpoint is that we cannot cycle the system if the Americans remain insular and just going on about America, 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 waving fucking flags. Okay? Because the thing is, this is a global crime cartel. We need to shut it down globally. If you give it a squeeze in one country, all it will do is it will put its weight in the other country and use the mechanisms of all the other countries to squeeze back on this one country. So in the 21st century, even though I really think we need the nation states back as firewalls, okay, to kind of compartmentalize our own little psychopaths so that they can't just reach the world domination, what we also need to do when it's about normal people, everyday citizens, is that everyday citizens have human rights anywhere on the planet. And what the NSA did is it has violated the basic human rights of absolutely everybody on the planet, not just Americans. And we need a mechanism to uphold everybody's human rights. Okay, now I do know, as far as I understand, right, Bill Binney's Thin Thread also worked, you know, providing anonymity for everybody, even though he was only bound to provide anonymity for Americans by the laws of the United States. Now, that's a good approach. So we need to identify the criminals and out the criminals by while at the same time keeping the privacy and the anonymity for all the other people. So in other words, protect them, because if you give up privacy, you open yourself up to human trafficking. That's basically it, to medical trafficking, sex trafficking, and a million other forms of trafficking, financial and economic trafficking too. Okay, so anyway, that aside, I want you to read this article. I'm not going to read it in great detail here, but I want you to look it up yourself. So please, you will find the link in the description, but also type it in yourself. Pfizer court exposes Obama's abuse of NSA to spy on Americans. Now, this article is very good because it goes into a lot of detail. And I'm not going to read it here. I'm just going to scan through, right? So here, for example, from Obama and Brennan, the damage brought on America. Very good. Reckoning is coming, illegal spying on Americans. What are the names? I love naming names. That is very important. And here are 3 names, Brennan, James the Clapper, and Comey. Now, these people are hugely guilty, right? Unconstitutional East German police state tactics, and that is also what gang stalking is, which ties right in, because the NSA spying is being used to coordinate the gang stalkers and is also used to commit gaslighting on victims. So when gang stalkers echo your private emails and your private conversation in your home, it comes from the NSA database. So this is Justice Collier, rules that 85% of DOJ searches of NSA databases were illegal. Wow. Okay. Covering up their crimes by staging a coup with the Russian hoax. Okay. So here you understand how the Russia hoax fits in. Panic on election night. So many searches, so many American targets. Okay. Trump is a crime victim, time to indict the coup plotters. Yes, I totally agree. But Trump is not the only crime victim. There are several thousand crime victims in the United States who are being tortured to death, and it is time to mention them too. Okay? So it's not just about Trump. I want people to start mentioning all the other victims, right? And why is this journalist not doing that? Now, John Brennan is at the center of a whole affair right here about that you can read about, and so on, so on, so on. So this is a very, I think the article finishes here. Okay, I think that's the article is finished. So I want you to just, I've skimmed it so that it's here on record that the article existed. It is here on Communities Digital News, which is www.com with 2M diginews.com. Okay. And it's /politics-2/ White House, Pfizer, NSA, Prism, Spy, Americans, all hyphenated, then -2012-119410. I say it, I read it out because articles like these tend to disappear. So here's the evidence that this article exists. Read it now. Okay, and get your head around this. Now, then the other thing I want to talk about is the bulk hacking by GCHQ in London. Okay, sorry, in the United Kingdom, but GCHQ is in Cheltenham. But now the High Court in London has ruled that bulk hacking by the UK spy agency is illegal. Okay. Now, this article is from the 17th of June, so it's fairly hot off the press. So a rights group argued, this was Liberty, I think, argues that the powers of MI5 and GCHQ to obtain and store data breach human rights. Okay. And this is a challenge to the 2016 Investigatory Powers Act, okay, by this organization called Liberty, which I totally applaud, okay? I applaud this, but, right? In all this, I've got huge issues, right? Because Liberty is also one of the human rights charities that has consistently ignored the evidence of victims being tortured to death in their own homes. So bulk hacking is frankly, a stupid child's play here. It fits in with the human trafficking, of course, but we are way past that. We are so past it. We are, in a stage where the global crime cartel, aka MI5 and GCHQ and MI6 and all the others, are using everything you send via email, all the YouTube videos you watch. Also, it's reading out your microphones and all the microphones around you to record you at any time. And it is storing all that data, your entire life data. It maps your life. It human traffics you. It data traffics you. You are being trafficked into medical experimentation, and it's using all this data to triangulate you, to pinpoint you, and if your opinions aren't right, to torture you to death in your own home or to shoot you flat out with a satellite weapon. And many people have already been murdered. Now, compared to that, right, bulk hacking is just one Lego piece in a huge Lego edifice. And I am frankly absolutely appalled that Liberty in June 2019 still just clogs up the courts talking about bulk hacking, not mentioning that British people are being tortured to death using the data gleaned from bulk hacking. At what point would it be time for these people to actually start talking about it? And this reminds me that in the email lists, I also would like to have the email contacts of the human rights charities, please, because I want to expose them too for the big fat frauds that they are. And knowing what a big fat fraud Liberty is, having ignored for 20 years people begging them for help as they were being tortured to death, frankly, when I see these things, all I can see is one big Masonic, cover up. I think this is either they want to push through some sort of legal, little things, but I don't know. I'm glad that they finally got around to this, and, this is still better than nothing, but it seems a bit, too little too late, frankly. After 20 years where GCHQ and NSA have mapped the entire world population. For all the billions of people on the planet, they already know your likes, your dislikes, your body height, your facial expression. They have got facial recognition data. They've got your voice prints. They know your political orientations. They know what ice cream you like. They know how you like to have sex, right? And with whom. They know who you fancy, who you're dating, everything. And they know where you and your children live, right? Now, after 20 years, the High Court has now said, oh, that seems to be illegal. Okay, well, the damage is already done, motherfuckers. Okay, that's the real issue here. When I see this stuff, like, oh, Liberty accuses MI5 and GCHQ of breaching human rights, yeah, no shit, but who is talking here? It's the human rights campaign group Liberty, right? And Liberty has ignored my testimony, along with many, many other testimonies. Oh, and it's the National Union of Journalists? Really? The same union of journalists who are not reporting about people being tortured to death? Really? Well, fuck you all. Fuck you. I don't know what this is, but it's just one big fat Masonic cover-up. Okay? And if there's something you need to watch in all of this, is that typically what they do is that they throw out genuine court cases like mine so that, oh, well, these victims, they can just be tortured to death over there. We don't really give a shit, right? As I'm trying to prepare my court case, still none of the journalists report about it, right? I am being shot to bits so that I cannot prepare my court case. I can barely cope with my own administrative duties here at home, right? I've got stuff to do and I cannot because of General Herigian, or what's his name, and the US Space Command's General Raymond shooting me to bits, right? Nobody machine guns a person, right? A high court litigant who had a court case against British intelligence all across Europe without these, Nazi fuckers knowing about it. It is impossible. Okay? So, on the one hand, we have all of this and not one journalist reports about it. And then these journalists are super keen on, oh, the bulk hacking. What's the story? What's the real story behind this? Because it can't be the real genuine concern for the mass extermination of the British people. So what is it? I suspect that through this court shenanigans and the court shimmy, they will put, in place some sort of court decisions or, judges' decisions or some sort of mechanisms whereby the Masonic crime cartel will come to the conclusion that, oh, it was probably illegal, but now it's legal or something like that. Okay. So I just want you to understand, when you read these supposedly good news, have a good look at the actors and have a good look at the, covering up of crimes against humanity they did for the last 20 years. Okay, because my case alone is stretching over 3 years. So they have covered up my case for 3 years, and there were reports going all the way back to the 1990s. So be very circumspect when you see these guys, and go to all the court hearings. Did you hear about the court hearings? Were you there? Was it announced? Did you have a chance to go? Was it announced on Liberty's webpage when the court hearing will be, so that they can have court observers? I don't think it was. Perhaps I'm wrong. Educate me. But if it wasn't, it very much sounds like they didn't want any court observers, doesn't it? So is there a transcript of the court hearing? Can we get the transcript? Could we find out what exactly these guys said? What was the evidence that was presented, right? These are the questions we should ask. And unless you ask them in the United Kingdom, well, I have to tell you, you're big baby, and you will be either, if you're lucky, just screwed, but if you're unlucky, murdered. Okay? So if you're not asking these questions, you're not a sovereign individual. You're not taking the reins in your own hands. You're just hoping that some Masonic people will, sort it for you so that it's right for you. And guess what? It won't be right for you. You will die, most likely. So please ask these questions. And I am personally extremely pissed off with all the human rights charities. And I don't trust these guys further than I can throw them, frankly. So this is another, work under progress. So it is your job to get the transcripts and get all this information. Now, work to be done still is here. I'm really grateful. Somebody pointed me to this book called Dope Inc. about Britain's opium war against the United States. Okay, this is the 1978 book by LaRouche. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me go to the front page, which LaRouche this is. Does it, hang on, where's the, it says here that this book was written by a US Labour Party investigating team. Okay, very interesting. And then directed by 3 people here. Okay. But why does it say? Okay, here. That's it, dedication, right? And the dedication here is by Lyndon LaRouche, right? So Lyndon LaRouche contributed to this book, and this is extremely important. I was only made aware of this about 2 days ago, and I want you all to have this. You don't have to read this book here on the screen. There is a download button. You can go here to the PDF, click on the PDF link, and you can download the PDF version or the Kindle version or the text version, whichever one you want. And I ask you to read it because I was even pointed to the right page. It's somewhere, is it 78 or something? But there's all these connections being revealed, okay? And it's also connections to the CFR and a million other things, okay, in this book. So it is, and names are being named as well here, which is something I very much like. So it is an extremely important book, and I want you to have it. So download a backup copy as long as this exists here, right? And also, as a footnote, you can find out more about Lyndon LaRouche. This is a man that is now passed away, but he has done very important campaigning in the United States and was arrested under extremely fraudulent grounds, as I've now learned. Okay, so if you want to find out more, you can go to, I think you will find them probably on YouTube. If you go to LaRouche Pack, okay, LaRouche Pack Live, that's it. This is Lyndon LaRouche here, the person who wrote the dedication. And I'm just gonna subscribe here. I'm surprised I'm not subscribed. Call the bell. And LaRouche Pack are doing excellent interviews here, okay? And I listened to a few of them. There's also one here with William Binney and many, many others. And I was just astounded at the high quality of these interviews, okay? These are exactly the sort of discussions we need to have about the economy and how to re-engineer it and what should be done instead of the fiat currency scam, okay? And I need to learn a lot more about the thoughts and ideas that Lyndon LaRouche had, but they were pretty big because he was taken down most violently. And that is usually, an indicator that he was on right above target and was about to implement something that would have shut down or helped to shut down the global crime cartel. So work to be done for you is to start listening to the videos of LaRouche Pack. Other homework for you is to read this book, Dope Inc. Okay, and also there's a book out about the CIA's connection to the drug trade. Okay, that I would like to talk about maybe next time, but you will find it on Amazon. But it is extremely important for all of you to understand the connection to the drug trade, because drugs and prostitution and human trafficking were the staple businesses through which the global crime cartel, or the mafia as it's known in Italy, has been making money. So anything that is cutting at the income streams, of the cartel is of course bad for the cartel, but anything that is related to people coming off drugs, people never using drugs in the first place, well, you will find that it typically gets attacked brutally because it is cutting at the income stream of the cartel. Okay. Oh, look, here's a connection to the Nazis as well. Very, very important. Now, in this book here, they show a drug user here, a lady with a needle in her arm. And I'm sorry if you find this image distressing, I will go elsewhere. But what I want you to understand is the following, okay? And I had a discussion with somebody who was into helping people who are addicted to drugs come off drugs. And that is an entire topic in itself, which I think can benefit, my personal view, can benefit from understanding more about targeting and implants and how people are being tortured. And the reason why I say that is the following. We know that the CIA is responsible for importing drugs in the United States. That is actually one of their main jobs, okay? The same with MI6 in Britain and the intelligence agencies elsewhere. Their main function, being, branches of Vatican intel, is, working for the crime cartel, is to generate revenue for the crime cartel. And this is to secure these revenue streams. And they are drugs, so the drug trade in the country, human trafficking, the sex trade in the country, the pedophilia in the country, and all that sort of stuff, right? That is the truth. That is what they do, right? All the killing is related to protecting those income streams. Now, if you have a very successful program helping drug addicts come off the drugs, you are cutting away at income streams for the crime cartel, because these drugs tend to be very addictive, very expensive, and sometimes people are hooked on them for life, okay? So any person you help get off the drugs, especially premium drugs like cocaine and heroin and stuff like that, that is a serious income, loss for the crime cartel. So they will do everything they can to boycott that. Now, very early on I think back in 2016 even, or early 2017, um, I heard from somebody who was helping drug addicts in Britain come off the drugs, and she did a lot of counseling, and she was being brutally attacked. She and her partner were being targeted viciously. Okay. Now, that is typical, because what she was doing without realizing is she was clawing away at one of the income streams by helping these women come off the drugs. Okay. She was, damaging that. Now, another way to help to block people coming off the drugs is making this entire process of detoxing and getting rid of the addiction as horrific as you can possibly imagine. Okay. Now, if you decide to come off the drugs, and this is a highly addictive drug that has, very severe withdrawal symptoms, the withdrawal symptoms might be bad, but modern medicine has lots of ways to alleviate them. So, for example, if the withdrawal symptoms involve extremely painful stomach cramps, well, there's lots of painkillers that you can take for those 3 days or for the week that you need to come off them. Okay. But if the CIA really doesn't want you to come off those drugs, they can extend it. So instead of giving you stuff that alleviates your symptoms, they can give you stuff that, maybe without the knowledge of the doctors who administer the stuff, makes it even more painful. Or if it turns out that, you were one of their prime customers, they would chip you, right, to also monitor, for example, the levels of the drug in your blood, and really monitor the effects of the drug and enhance the addictiveness and so on. If you happen to be chipped, right, they can use the chips to increase the pain. They can use the chips to triangulate the same satellite weapons that are gunning me to gun you in your hospital bed. You will think that you have agonizing joint pain, so agonizing muscle cramps, but actually you will have a directed energy beam pointed at you, right? Now, this will be enhanced by the fact that all the hospitals, for no discernible reasons, decided to put Wi-Fi routers everywhere, ostensibly to help you watch happy kitten videos as you're recovering, but actually in real life, they know full well that those are highly damaging devices, right, that are radiating you, that actually slowing down the recovery process. So why are they in every room in a hospital? Well, it is if they want to really aggravate your symptoms. And this is what Melanie Richan and I noticed walking into Hospital Erasmus. As soon as we walked in, I mean, it was okay in the public areas, but as soon as we walked into her patient room, we were just tortured like you wouldn't believe. I couldn't stand being in that room. And I was investigating, where the hell have they hidden the weapon? And then I saw on the ceiling a big Cisco Systems router, but it was supersized. It wasn't a normal router. It was big performance device, right? Probably with an antenna system that covered several frequencies, extra frequencies that you maybe need. So that's the deal. Now, you need to understand how the intelligence agencies are running the drug trade to even cotton on to the potential connection between withdrawal symptoms and chip torture. Okay? But once you know that they are running it and they are also implanting people, they would be idiots not to use that. Okay? They would be literally gibbering morons, which they are, but they would have to be even more stupid not to do it. So, in other words, as a systems analyst, I can put down a bet, for £50 on the fact that they will guaranteed use this. Now, if you are addicted to drugs and you know this, okay, there's several things you can do, right? If you, for example, find an eye implant in your eye, so you can see that there's, green fluorescent bit in your eye, and you go and try to do withdrawal and you end up with horrific hallucinations, well, those hallucinations are not so much your brain necessarily as the movies, right, that the drug dealers are broadcasting to you to ensure that you'll be so freaked out and you will have such a horrible time that you either bored coming off drugs, right, or you end up somehow, damaged and, in the end will go back to drugs. They will literally try everything. But it means that if you are addicted to drugs and you would like to come off them, you have all these extra tenterhooks, okay, that you can enforce your rights. Number one, once you know it's hallucinations and once you really know it is you are being shown movies, you don't get drawn into them that intensely. Okay, you can train yourself. You also know that your very intense dreams are artificial. When you know that, you can try or begin to distance yourself from these hallucinations. Okay, which makes it a little bit better if you're prepared for this, right? That you'll be shown all sorts of crazy bullshit. But if you keep thinking, no, it's the CIA, it's the CIA, it's the CIA, it's the CIA, don't watch, ignore it, ignore, 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 it helps a bit, right? It doesn't quite take you by surprise. Now, the other thing is also the chip torture. So should you have a particularly bad time, right, you also know to disable the bloody Wi-Fi router in your room and ensure that this withdrawal clinic or wherever you go has absolutely zero Wi-Fi. It doesn't mean that they will be, totally clean because, hey, it's a withdrawal clinic. That's exactly where the CIA would plant their staff, right? But you have a lot more control, right? You are a lot more aware. But I want you to be aware because I also want us to tackle this entire problem of drugs. It's not just the human trafficking and the sex trafficking. We need to tackle the drugs as well. Okay, we need to tackle them to shut down that revenue stream for the crime cartel, but we also need to save all those people who are taking drugs and are being tortured by the fact that they can't come off them and being tortured in the process of coming off them. Okay, and also we need to protect all the people who genuinely try to get you off drugs and are being targeted for that. Okay, but if we all unify and understand that all of us, we are fighting the same crime cartel. In a sense, by you coming off your drugs, you are fighting the same crime cartel as I'm fighting, trying to get British intelligence and European intelligence back into court. Okay? It's the same beast we are attacking. Okay? And I think we can learn from each other. There are little pointers that we can give each other. Okay, work to be done. Now, I have just a few minutes left before I'm seriously, talking too much. Now, I would like to give a few more pointers, for work to be done, lessons to be learned, and stuff like that. So let me just share my screen like this. So, in other news, this is good news. This is about work having been done. I just would like to point you to an interview that I've seen with Andres Zauk, the inventor who was, and this is, by the way, his lawyer, who gave an excellent plaidoyer. Okay, excellent work by this guy. I was pleasantly surprised by this lawyer. I was bracing myself for the worst, and this guy was really going for it. So this is excellent. But this is Andres Zauk, who protested against the stranglehold of the Catholic Church on Switzerland by setting an altar alight. Okay, then he was arrested and then he was locked up, but the punishment was torture. It was ludicrous. He was held in solitary confinement for several years. So they really tried to break him. They tried to destroy his marriage. Okay, they did everything they could to destroy this man. I also have reason to believe that he was assaulted with directed energy weapons inside the jail and outside, but that's still under investigation. But the Swiss prison service here was torturing this man in the most sadistic way. And then when his time was up in the jail, they refused to let him go. And they refused him for so long, he had to get the highest court in the land to say, yes, he has to be released. And the highest court did the unusual step of even setting a deadline on this, which they typically never do. Okay. And then the prison still refused. And they used a fraudulent agency called the Kinder- und Erwachsenenschutzbehörde, meaning the Child and Adult Protection Agency, which is a hugely fraudulent Nazi type of setup, it seems, in Switzerland. And this agency then claimed that he was a danger to himself and others, and they continued to hold him. And this guy, in the end, despaired, and the only thing he could do is he set, I think, an old newspaper light in his cell using his kettle. And in the end, he set a cushion and the bedsheet alight. But the only reason he could even set it alight was because in the prison, none of the smoke alarms in the cells were working. And that was known. Okay? It was known that the smoke alarms weren't working. And nobody gave a damn. So anyway, I went to his court case, and in this little clip, you can see the back of my head as I'm interviewing his lawyer. And this happened in Alton, and most miraculously, he was released. So I reported about his release, but here is now the mainstream media report about this court case, and there was one representative from mainstream media there. And but when you go into the details of the case, behind the scenes, all the stuff that was not mentioned by mainstream media, this is a horrific case of torture by the organized crime cartel in Switzerland, using the typical methods of the organized crime cartel, which is administrative terrorism, false attempts at psychiatrization, directed energy weapon attacks, which I am now going to just say here that I believe that they were involved as well. I've got reasons to believe. And horrific torture with solitary confinement and torturing a person by keeping them there beyond the date of their release. And I would also say that locking people up for 5 years for just, setting a shitty little altar alive is extraordinary, right? It's insane. It is totally insane, because the property damage, it wasn't really a Michelangelo painting above that altar that, was burned. It was really minor. The actual property damage was not that bad. And besides, the Vatican is the richest organization on the planet. I'm sure their insurance would have covered that, given that every single shop in the world has, insurance for theft and property damage. So it was not something that the Vatican, which traditionally has also run insurance businesses, couldn't have covered for themselves. So what it actually is, it is an instance of severe, horrific torture here in Switzerland. And I'm pleased to report that this man has now been released, but I think all the investigators should taste blood when they are reading the details of how this man was horrifically tortured by the criminals in Switzerland, and it's time to go after them now. The KESP, so this Child and Adult Protection Agency, is involved, and the prison is most certainly involved, and certain judges are also involved in this torture. Okay, and it's time to have this entire Masonic crime network here in Switzerland uprooted. So good news, this is about work that has been done and work still to be done. Okay, you will find the link below, but this is all in German. Now, other work to be done. I keep hearing about people dying in prison. Here, for example, is the BBC's news report from the 17th of June about Egypt's ousted President Mohamed Morsi dying during trial. How the fuck can that be? Well, I tell you how, with directed energy weapons, for example, or biowarfare, right? But it says that he has collapsed in a courtroom and died. Now, the probability to collapse in a courtroom and dying are effectively zero for all intents and purposes. Okay, and you understand that when you actually look at the time span you will spend in court compared to the rest of your, lifetime, or the rest of the time you might be suffering from a heart problem, and the probability to collapse in court is so low, it is basically negligible. However, if the crime cartel wants to have a particularly showy spectacle of a murder, they will do exactly that. Okay. Now also, right, open brackets, if the crime cartel would want to ferret somebody out who actually hasn't died, because these days we don't know what's going on, what you can always do is have a very spectacular display of a person collapsing in the courtroom, kind of bringing it home to people that this person, is as good as dead, and then disappear him later through the Masonic networks. Like, for example, the Nazis were disappeared out of Nazi Switzerland, Freudian, Nazi Germany, and then taken over to United States and to Argentina and other places, right? So we don't know what the hell happened here, But I can tell you that collapsing in a courtroom and dying is, the probability for that is essentially 0. So keep an eye on this case, and always remember, we are dealing with Masonic bluffs and double bluffs. So we don't even know if this guy is really dead. Other good news and work to be done. There's another petition about targeted individual lives matter and about stop organized gang stalking. Now, you might wonder, is there even a point in all of us signing these petitions because they never lead anywhere? And the answer is yes, there is, because by expressing your opinion, these petitions can be quoted in court. It can be quoted that so and so many people have expressed, right, that they want this to stop, right? Even if it doesn't meet the threshold, it is further evidence that so many individual people have expressed their opinion. So please go and sign this petition as well, express your view, right, and help us keep this issue alive and keep, move towards a solution. Okay, what else do I've got? I've got 3 more links. Oh, yes. Work to be done. Now, the BBC News has now published software that shows how easy it is to manipulate video content to make it appear like somebody said something that they never did. I think the video on the left is real. The video on the right with Obama talking is completely fake. And most of us looking at it will not be able to tell the difference. Now, this is very important because what they can always do is they can create videos about VIPs, about people like me, and just modify what we said. Now, with me, there were several attempts to get high definition video with high definition, high speed cameras. And something tells me that the last couple of times I was plonked behind a high speed, high definition camera is that they want to exactly film my physiognomy to prepare videos where I will say things I have never said. Okay. And I am already waiting, bracing myself for that. But, of course, people like presidents and so on will have this done to them, first and foremost. So I just would like to point you to the evidence here, and this appeared as part of the article from the 20th of June, so 3 days ago, in the article called "The Fake French Minister in a Silicone Mask Who Stole Millions." So here it's about, a fake, a scammer who is pretended to be this politician. But as part of this article further down, they also present this software, which no doubt was made either by DARPA or the NSA, right, or GCHQ, a place like that. And it allows them to create video footage that is completely fake. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that. Now, the other thing I would like to point to here is a video I really liked, and it's about "It's All a Giant Psyop," okay? And this is by The Seething Frog here. And in this video, you will have this gentleman explain why he thinks, oh, hang on, I think I have to refresh for it to appear. There, okay. So this is the gentleman here, and I really liked his analysis. I liked his views, and he is saying how everything is a big psyop and that nothing will happen. No people will be arrested and jailed. I hope he's wrong, but what I want you to realize is that to what extent you can be psyoped and defrauded. It's not just false flags, like the Oklahoma City bombing that then introduces the Patriot Act, that then basically takes all your rights away and sets up death squads that will then murder you in your own home. No, even the investigations themselves can be turned into a giant psyop. So here he's saying how Trump will not do anything. It's just one big psyop. And, all these stories about these indictments and having 50,000 indictments is all just nonsense. Now, even if investigators generate these indictments, right, it's just no point having a heap of evidence somewhere. What needs to happen is that people need to be jailed, right? These indictments need to be processed in court, so the processing needs to start ASAP. right? We have to keep in mind the processing is itself a very lengthy process. It clogs up the courts, right? So the allowances have to be made that we need more judges and more court cases than we ever had before, right? And only when these people are jailed and stay in jail or are executed, and we can prove that they are dead after the execution, only then is it mission accomplished. Until then, there's so much potential for psyop and lying and frauds, it's ridiculous. Okay? Now, I want you to watch this, and I don't just want you to watch it because I want to dishearten you, okay? I agree with those people who say that Trump is the best chance we have because all the previous people and all the alternatives apart from Trump would have never ever done what Trump has already done. But I also want you to be aware that Trump, right, this guy who says he knows who did 9/11 and so do you, he is a Mason. He had to be a Mason to become a billionaire. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. But this means even if he means well, he does have other commitments, other pressures. Now, that doesn't mean all is lost, but what it means is you need to take heed of what this guy says, and you need to apply even more pressure on Trump. You need to use this opening in the door to really kick the barn door open and get all the traitors for treason. Do you understand? And I want you to watch this guy and listen carefully to what he has to say, so that then you can inoculate yourself mentally against all the ways you can be defrauded. And with everything you hear about indictments or arrest and so on, you have to bang the table and demand evidence, evidence, evidence. You demand transparency, demand a personal direct view into this. Okay, you are sovereign American. You need to take part in all these court hearings. If you are working and you can't be there during the day, you need to demand that the video footage is either live broadcast, and then even when it's live broadcast, that afterwards you can watch the footage. You do not settle for anything less. And then you also demand the transcript, being fully aware that, as the BBC has just revealed, even video footage can be modified so that people didn't actually say afterwards, they look like they said something else entirely than what they actually said in court when there's a live stream. Okay? So what you all need to do, you Americans and all the people like me who are affected by whatever the Americans are doing, right? We all need court cases now based on the indictments. These court cases must not be in Guantanamo. They have to be on US soil, right? Not in the private District of Columbia, but on US soil, okay? And I am aware that the US is owned by the Virginia company, which is in turn a subsidiary of the Crown Corporation. Nevertheless, I want real life Americans with their bums on seats in that courtroom. And I want them afterwards to report on YouTube what they saw. I want to be able to see the footage and I want to be able to see an official transcript of what was said. And then every person has to be able to download that transcript so that in 20 or 30 years' time, we can still all agree on what was said back then. Okay, this is super important. Don't settle for anything less. Okay, just do not settle for anything less. And you need to listen to men like him, not to get disheartened, but to get inoculated. Okay, to know full well of what bullshit the Masons will try to pull on you. And you need to know full well that Trump will not be able to solve all the problems for you. It is your duty. And there are still huge problems. I am being horrifically tortured. I'm being shot to bits. I was barely functional for 2 days. Today, right now, I'm doing well because they are, being very, very careful with the satellite weaponry, because they know I've got alufoil here, and I just have to hold it up, and you will fucking hear the shots, and you will see this thing being dented, like I've put out videos to that effect before, right? So when I'm on a live broadcast, I'm doing fine because I'm not being shot. But as soon as I get off the video, or, heaven forbid, when I want to go to bed and have some rest, I am being shot to smithereens. And the people who are doing it to me are, first of all, first one in line of responsibility, Philippe Rebaud, the head of the Swiss Armed Services, whose own bloody responsibility it is to protect me and the Swiss population. And yes, I, as a European national, have a right for my protection here. I am a civilian, and I'm working my ass off to protect the Swiss. So in a certain respect, I have justified my right to existence here in Switzerland, having worked so very hard to help the Swiss. Now, Philippe Rebaud, General whatever, Herigian, Chief of NATO Space Command, he is doing this as well. And the US Space Command, General Raymond, was also responsible for the mass murder of Californians in the autumn. Okay, these people need to be shut the hell down. And I will not believe anything that Trump does or comes out of his mouth unless he makes a phone call, because he's the chief of the armed forces in the United States, and he has General Raymond and General what's-his-face, at NATO, called the hell off the case. These people need to be shut down. And unless Trump makes that phone call, I'm sorry, I'm not going to believe anything he says. I don't care how many walls he puts up, because I'm also painfully aware that you can put up a wall, but the CIA has tunnels. The CIA doesn't bother putting the drugs into, lorries to carry them above ground. Why? Would they be stupid? No. They've got an entire tunnel system that stretches all the way down to Mexico, all the way further down than Mexico, right? It stretches all across the United States. And that is, as I would expect, the major conduit for the drugs. That is the only way the CIA can ensure that Monday morning, when you've just recovered from your weekend high and you're stumbling out to get your next fix from your local dealer, that your local dealer has the goods. Okay? So putting up a wall only means that private people can't import drugs, meaning less competition for the CIA, meaning the prices shoot up to a premium. Okay? And there you are. You have just made more money for the crime cartel. So I'm sorry, a wall is a good start. It's a start, right? Because I agree, a million times that a lot of criminals have been brought into the United States, okay? But if it just stays with the wall, while at the same time, the Trump administration, introduces FASB 56, which is this, by the way, I should show you the link, because I was just given the link by one of the investigators to the wonderful article that Katherine Horton has written on this topic. Okay, so there's things I can say more about that, but not today. But you need to open this link, okay? Have a read about this that I keep going on about, this FASB 56, okay? Most people don't even know how to spell that, so they won't even know what to look for on Google. So I will show you, okay? This is important. It ties in with the false flags. It ties in with Trump. It ties in with a million other things, so please read it. Form your opinion. Start your little gray cells, start them thinking, and make up your own mind about this. So I want you, as the final link here, read The Real Game of Missing Money by Katherine Horton, as published on the Solari Report in the 2018 annual wrap-up. Now, this article here is about, the big missing money, the 21 trillion. It is about the, the FHA, HUD, and the US Treasury, the Department of Justice, the Office of Management and Budget, and the New York Fed and its member banks be described as a criminal enterprise. Okay? And this is US Senate staff who described it as a criminal enterprise. Okay? So this is the global crime cartel that we're talking about. Now, what do we know? I will leave it to you to read this, but it's about the 21 trillion. But also the adoption of FASB 56, it's this one here, and she says that this is the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board, Statement 56, that's FASB 56, okay? What is important, it authorizes secret books on a permanent basis. And with secret books, I don't mean novels. These are secret accounting books, okay? What this means is that the US Treasury can be milked for endless amounts of money into perpetuity henceforth, okay? It means that FASB 56 says that you can take as much money without having to give any accounts what the hell about it, what you're doing with the money, how much you have taken, and so on. Okay? And she says keeping secret books is rendering public financial reports meaningless. Okay? Now, please look up this thing here. If you're in America or if you're affected by America, which is us all, look up this thing, the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board, Statement 56. Okay? And please, please, please listen to the interviews by Katherine Horton, the author. I've heard very good interviews about FASB 56 on Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog. You absolutely have to get your head around this. Now, the importance of all this with relation to targeting is that FASB 56 will allow mercenary armies and the gang stalking death squads to take as much money out of the US Treasury as they need to kill you all. That's what it's about, okay? And the way it's done, it's through these secret books and through not having to give any account about what the money is being used for. So this does away with the whole, what's it called, vouchers, gift vouchers, with which some of the lower ranking members of the gang stalking community are being paid. And as soon as FASB 56 was adopted, as in, signed into law, Blackwater, the mercenary, band of serial killing psychopaths, put out an advert saying Blackwater's coming. Okay, so you can bet that Blackwater will also run the directed energy weapons and be involved in the American genocide. Why would they not be? They are the most trained killers, out there. And because they're killers and they're earning money with killing, well, once the troops are back from Iraq, what the hell should Blackwater do? They're not going to take up knitting. So, wonder where the next kill is going to come from for them. It turns out it will be US and Europe. So if your neighbors start dying, think Blackwater's coming. Okay? If you're wondering who the hell pays for these serial killing Nazis, it's you, through your taxpayer money, and it's also through the debt taken on by your government every year. Okay, because maybe you are aware by now that not a single penny of your tax dollars is actually going towards paying for schools and hospitals. Oh, no, 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 no. All your actual wealth generated, the money from that goes to the Vatican via the City of London. So it goes to the IRS, to the City of London, which is an extraterritorial tax haven owned by the Vatican, and goes to the Vatican Bank. Okay? That's how it is. Then who is paying for schools and services and hospitals? Well, your government takes on a new loan every single year. Okay, a new loan, that's what's country debt, and then all of those services are paid out of that. That's how it works. Now, when you have FASB 56, what it means is that the money held in the treasury, which is this new loan from the Vatican crime cartel, can be diverted, to any of the projects they please without any of the Americans ever hearing about it. In other words, there is then the public government with its supposedly public accounts, and there's a dark economy that doesn't have to give account of what it does to anybody ever. And the enabling mechanisms are the Patriot Act, and this is what ties in with the Oklahoma City bombing and the false flag of 9/11, right, that Artane was writing about, and so much more, right? So the false flags lead to the legislation that will then enable all this. And then in the financial realm, the equivalent of the Patriot Act is FASB 56. and it's now in place. Okay, so get ready for the genocide. Okay, if you don't like the genocide, there's work to be done, guys, right? There's work to be done. And as this gentleman who said it's all a psyop said, if you believe that by just liking a video or by just sending a tweet, the job will be done, you're badly mistaken. Okay, so the only thing that actually gets stuff done is physical things changing in the physical world. Now, the first step to getting physical, okay, is to move your backside into the courtroom as a court observer, because your entire being and body mass and your glare at the judge tends to keep these judges honest. That's what I saw in Switzerland when I attended the court hearing of Andres Tauk. I was amazed how the Swiss judiciary put on such a dog and pony show. It was amazing. They had a very young judge, I think younger than me, no history, nothing we could tap, right? Who still had a soul, was super friendly, took great care to even translate Latin terms into not just Swiss German, so Switzerland or Swiss German, but High German, that even the German press could hear it, and even I could understand it. And he was super polite. It was amazing. But you can be sure that had there not been 20 court observers in the room, the story would have been entirely different, right? They would have rolled out the old Masons who have a face that, you know, needs a license to kill in itself. And, you know, this person would have been just mauled. Now, the person I can see being set up to be mauled is Professor James Fetzer. So in other words, when he right now at this court hearing on the 17th of June, I think he was alone, right? There were a couple of supporters, but by far not enough. Next time he goes into court for the appeal, I need a band of very angry Americans who know all about the Oklahoma City bombing, who know all about 9/11, who know about false flags, who have seen the 4 interviews with Professor Fetzer, all to do with the murder of JFK, Sandy Hook, and all the other false flags. You need to know this off by heart to understand why Professor Fetzer is important and why his court case is important and why extremely valuable people like him, you must not allow them to be harmed by the global crime cartel. Okay? For the crime cartel, it's essentially dominance display. It's not just about silencing these people. It's about publicly demonstrating the power to crush people, okay? To silence all the others who would be the next Professor Fetzer about to blow the whistle or about to come forward, okay? So it's a psychological war as well. If you want to fight that psychological war, you make sure that while the judge is feeling the pressure and the heat from the mafia, the judge also has a baying crowd outside, right? That will remind him every second of the hearing that, oh, no, 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 the mafia might be one thing, but there are more Americans here surrounding you and your career and your home, you know? And I'm not saying that any of these judges should be attacked, but they do need a pressure to match the pressure from the global crime cartel. You know, every judge will just find, even the honest ones, will find themselves being threatened by the mafia. So the Americans have to put in a higher threat, so a better bid, if you like, right? And only then can a judge decide in favor of these people. Only then can a judge be just. And the positive reverse, which is slightly less threatening, you know, vocabulary, is that only when the American people back a judge and will stand by the judge when he makes hard, honest decisions in favor of the victims, only then are judges safe from this global crime cartel. Okay, so when you turn up in the back of the room and there's a queue outside and there's an overflow room and there's an overflow of people wanting to see this court case on the steps of the court, watching it during the hearing on their mobile phones as it's being live streamed, right? But being there to be ready to interview the people when they come out, only then, and really only then, can most judges even have a chance of deciding an honest way. This is the minimum requirement. So my, job now is to organize 500 angry Americans, angry but well-behaved and highly informed Americans, to go to his next court hearing. Okay, so work to be done, guys. You need to do your homework. The last court hearing was in Dane County in Wisconsin. Okay, so you guys have to be on the ready. You have to start educating the people of Wisconsin who could go. Okay, and we need bums on seats. For every court case, we need bums on seats, first and foremost. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say today. Do your homework, read up about the false flags, understand the Patriot Act, understand that it was Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, who introduced the Patriot Act. So if you're being fucked by gang stalkers, it was Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden. Never forget that, right? Never forget that. Do your research, educate yourself, and find the criminals. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful Sunday. Bye for now.